All right, hello everybody. Welcome to an esoteric Saturday on Comic Book Radio. I'm your host, Peter Cimetti. This is episode 226. We got Mike RICKSECKER on the show. We're going to be talking about shadow people, stack time theory, dimensional portals. If you think I'm describing the upcoming Blood Moon graphic novel, you'd be wrong, but you'd also be right. So it's interesting to have Mike on the show, considering we're launching the Blood Moon graphic novel on the 21st, and it does touch upon some of those things. So I'm curious as to the science behind them, the metaphysics, whatever it may be. I'm interested in all of it. You guys know that. But before we bring him on, I want to say hello to those of you that are in the chat. I appreciate you guys being here. We got Bobo in the house. Says 18 months ago, I woke up to an 8-foot-tall shadow person at the foot of my bed, crossed myself, and went back to sleep. It's creepy when that happens. That experience has happened to me. I talked about it last night. That's happened to me like 3 times, and one of them in particular was insane. Got real close to me, and I'll never forget that, man. But I don't want to retread down that path, at least not until Mike is on the show. Maybe he can tell me what the hell it was all about. We got Wayne here. What's up, Wayne? Thank you for being here tonight. Ben Spar is here too. What's up, Ben? Hope you're doing good. Thank you for joining us. Seer of All That Is Obvious says, that new hat looks cool. I'm glad I got one. Yeah, the new hats arrived today. The red, white, and blue ones anyway. I'm still waiting on the others, but this one looks cool and it feels nice. We only got one left. Only one left on alternacomics.com. All right, so enough of that. Let's bring on the man of the hour. I am very curious about all these topics tonight. I'm really interested in having this conversation. I'm so glad I could finally have it. Welcome, Mr. Mike RICKSECKER. What's up, Mike?
Hey, Peter. Thanks for having me on. I have to say, I think this is already my favorite podcast because your opening music was Bill Conti's Going the Distance, and you had the best Rocky quote ever in your footage. So yeah, love it already.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Oh, I tell you, I need that every time when this show goes on. I need to hear those words, no matter what day I've had, no matter what's going on, and it just gets me fired up. And I get a lot of people that comment on it in the same way, so I'm glad you're digging it already.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a huge Rocky fan growing up. So
same here.
Love to see it. And yeah, that's a quote. I mean, that was with the 6th movie, Rocky Balboa. But yeah, I use that quote all the time. It's self-motivation. It's not how hard you hit, it's how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, because that's what's going to happen to you. You can't control what's going to happen to you, and things are inevitably going to happen to you, and you got to find a way to bounce back, get up again, and keep fighting and moving forward. Yep. And it pertains to every aspect of life, no matter what it is that you're doing, and no matter who you are. So it's such a fundamental quote. I love it. It's great.
It really is. Yeah.
Absolutely. But Mike, so I'm really looking forward to having this conversation tonight, man, because I've seen you on a bunch of the different shows. I told you before the show started, but you touch upon a lot of topics that I'm really, really interested in. I mean, I have a comic series called King Cryptid, and it dives into the supernatural, the paranormal. There's paranormal history in it. There's dimensional stuff in it. So I'm curious as to how far away I'm getting from some of the actual stuff out there. But I mean, maybe I'm hitting some of it on the nose. So maybe you can help me turn fiction into a bit of a reality. But
Sure.
But before that, how'd you get into all this stuff?
Well, I'm an experiencer. I've been experiencing things ever since I was a young child, and my first real significant paranormal experience was actually a shadow person experience that I had when I was about 8 years old. Woke up in the middle of the night, and there's this tall, dark figure standing in the corner of my bedroom. And at that age, I had no idea about shadow people, shadow beings, anything like that. I just thought there was an intruder in the house. Somebody had broken in. They were there to rob the place, maybe kill me, that sort of thing. That's where your mind goes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm still alive to tell the tale, which is awesome. But it did get physical with me. This thing approached my bed, and I'm trying to scream, right? My mouth opens up. I'm so frightened, nothing comes out of my mouth. And it comes up to the bed, leans over, and I'm staring at this dark, blank face. There's like nothing there. There's no eyes, no nose, no mouth. It's just black and dark and just, like faceless. And again, I'm still trying to scream, but nothing's coming out. And it did something really unusual. It grabbed me by the wrists, crossed my
Oh,
arms across my body, and then ran off down the hall, of all places, into the hallway closet. So at that point, I found my voice, found my legs, ran off screaming to my parents' bedroom, and I'm trying to tell them what happened and what I had seen, and they're just, I mean, I have nice parents and they're kind. They're trying to console me and calm me down. They're telling me that I just had a bad dream, but I knew I hadn't had a bad dream. This thing was absolutely real. Now, I wouldn't ever call that a haunted house. This was just like a one-off. It was like the only
mm,
time something like that ever really happened there. And we lived in that house for 10 years. But then when I moved, I was 13, we moved from that house in Massachusetts to a new house in Ohio. And as I'm unpacking boxes and putting things away, I kept seeing this figure standing in the doorway of my room. And I turned and look, and off it would go, like running toward my parents' bedroom. Like, what the heck is that? And this happened like several times over the course of the first few days that we were there. It's like, okay, this is bizarre. I'd be unpacking boxes, putting things away. There's the thing standing there, and off it would run. Very different though than that first encounter that I had, because that first one was very dark, very solid, got physical, all of that. Where this one it was translucent. It never interacted with me. It would always run off. And so finally, I decided to ask my mom about it. And I'm like, Mom, I keep seeing this thing, and I described it. And she actually admitted that she had seen the thing too. So maybe she thought I was a little more mature. I don't know how mature a 13-year-old really is, but maybe she thought I was a little more mature, could handle hearing that she had seen the thing too. Um, but she didn't seem alarmed by it. She was just kind of like very matter of fact. Yeah, I've seen that too. Like, oh, okay. So it was great on a couple of levels. One, it was affirmation that, okay, I'm not crazy. Mom has seen it too. And two, mom's not alarmed about it. So I guess I don't need to worry about it. So I actually got playful with this thing. I started calling him Tom, like peeping Tom, because he'd like peep in my room. I say, hi, Tom, and off he'd go. And that activity lasted for about the first 3 or 4 months that we were there. And then it just kind of subsided. So I chalked it up to something that was there at the house, was checking out the new family, deemed we were okay, and just went about its business. So, yeah, those were my first two really significant influences when I was young that kind of got me into all of this.
oh, so when that was happening, you were fully conscious. It wasn't like that state between sleep and wake.
No, I mean, you can experience shadow people all different times a day in all different
Wow.
situations. Yeah, there's like this prevailing idea that it has to happen at night, it has to be in bed, it has to be associated with sleep, all of this stuff. And that comes out of the whole sleep paralysis phenomenon, I mean, which is a real biological phenomenon. People really do experience sleep paralysis. I've experienced it before in a different way. Most times, people coming out of a sleep will be paralyzed, and it's really the body will paralyze you while you're sleeping so that you don't act out your dreams while you sleep. It's not 100% foolproof, because sometimes we accidentally kick our significant other while we're in bed. Stuff like that happens, but that's the idea. That's what it's supposed to be doing. You can actually have it the reverse way too, where this is the way it's happened to me, where my body was just so exhausted that it just shut down. But I could still hear everything going on around me. So yeah, the couple times that this happened, I'm sitting there, and they both happened in a work environment. And the first time I was was I was still in the Air Force. You don't want to get caught sleeping on the job when you're in the military. That's bad. Um, so I'm trying to first, I'm kind of freaking out at first, like, oh my gosh, what in the world's going on? Because I'm still cognizant of everything going on around me, but I can't move at all. And so I finally calm myself down enough to figure out, okay, let me see if I can at least like maybe wiggle a toe or something. And I was finally able to do that. And then I was able to wiggle a couple of toes and then the foot. And I kind of like worked up my body until finally boom, I was able to wake my mind back up. So that's another way that sleep paralysis can actually happen. And so yeah, people usually associate shadow beings with the sleep paralysis component, and even like National Institutes of Health. If you go on their website, you can find documents of the intruder phenomena is what they call it, and they always associate it with the sleep paralysis. But people see shadows all different times of day. It could be in broad daylight, just walking through the house. They see them out in the woods. Yeah, we're completely conscious and awake, and there it is happening in front of you.
What's the science behind all this? Well, like, how are people explaining this away? Because it seems to be acknowledged, but it also seems to be dismissed at the same time. And I find it such a weird phenomenon.
Yeah.
It just can't easily be like, oh, it's something or other with waking sleep and stuff.
Well, and that's how the medical community tries to. That's how they try to explain it away. That the way they try to explain it away is that it's a hallucination out of your dream state, that when you're waking up and you're having the sleep paralysis occur, that you're still having a dream going on and is playing out in your bedroom rather than in your sleep. Here's what I have to say about that. Well, for one, I just kind of explained we see these all different times of day. It doesn't have to be while you're sleeping. But also, we dream about all different kinds of things while we're sleeping. It's not just people, that might be cars and motorcycles in our dreams. There could be bushes, trees, birds flying overhead. I've had dreams of being on stage with Motley Crue, and I've never woken up to
Yeah, they're in your bedroom.
Yeah, like the stadium and 10,000 people, the pyrotechnics going off. That would be awesome. But that's never happened. It's people wake up and they see this being, this humanoid type person, or maybe even a couple standing there. So so we have to start asking ourselves, what's going on here, because it's not just a hallucination. And I believe it's two different phenomena that happen to be happening or occurring at the same time. And what I mean by that is so we each have this toroidal field of energy that surrounds us, right? Let me give an example before I launch into that. So people who have had small children can relate to this. Child wakes up in the middle of the night, comes into the room, wakes you up, says, I need to use the bathroom, I had a bad dream, need to drink water, something like that, right? And so you get up and you take care of it. And usually they tap you on the shoulder, shake you awake, that sort of thing. But sometimes you end up with that kid. And my youngest son, Cameron, was notorious for this, where he would just come into the bedroom and stand next to the bed and just stare. And all of a sudden you'd wake up and here's this kid staring down at you like, oh my God, Cameron, what are you doing? It's like, well, I need to use the bathroom or whatever it is. Okay, but next
just
time,
staring at you, waiting for you to wake up.
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, well, cool. We'll go take care of that. But next time, shake me awake or something, because it's kind of creepy. So so the question becomes, okay, so how did I wake up? Because he wasn't standing there for that long, and this would happen several times, and other people report this too. That again, we all have this toroidal field of energy that surrounds us, extends out several feet. This is science, and it's this energy field, and so you can feel a presence around you. So when his energy field came into mine, I could feel that he was there, and that's what woke me up. And I'm seeing him. Oh my God, what are you doing here? I basically felt his presence. And so that is what's happening with these shadow beings. They're coming into our rooms. We don't know for what purpose. A lot of them are just standing there staring, watching, observing. I have a follow-up to all of that later if we get to it. And basically, we are feeling their energy in the room, whether it's in the corner, at the edge of the bed, next to the bed, wherever it is. We're feeling their presence in a room, and we wake up and we see them there. And sometimes, not every time, but sometimes we have that sleep paralysis state that kicks in. That's a natural biological thing. And now we're seeing an intruder in the house. We can't move. Why am I paralyzed? And your adrenaline starts to race. It's like this rabbit hole that we fall down into. So it's two different phenomena that just happen to be occurring at the same time.
Man. Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what you're talking about too, because there's times where I could just even be in the grocery store and you pass a certain person, or you pass and you get a strong vibe
Yeah.
from this person. You don't know who the hell they are. Or there's times when you're like in an empty room and then you're not paying attention to anything. Someone walks in or whatever, and you can feel the presence. You don't hear them, you don't see them, anything like that. They're away wherever, and you can feel that someone's there. Or you think you're in an empty room, but there's somebody there. Or even pets. Like I felt like my cat's presence. We're like, where is she?
Yeah, they have
And
energy too.
I'm like, I think she's like over here. I feel like she's over here, and she sure enough be over there. So it's strange how, and that is something that is grounded in science, that we all emit this kind of energy.
Yeah.
But when it comes to shadow people in particular, do you think that this is something that, is it like ghosts? Is it spirits? Are these like former entities? Were they living? Are these completely different dimensional beings? What is your take on that?
Yes. Yeah, that's the
All
big
of the
question.
above.
All the above. And really, that's truly the case. Yeah, and that's always the big question. Okay, what are they? We want one. We're human. We want one singular answer to explain it all. We try to always categorize and compartmentalize things so that we can better understand and be like, okay, that's what that is, and I can move on. Except that, yeah, all of these shadow entities are not one specific thing. You have to take into context of the situation, what I'm looking at, because they come in all different shapes and forms and sizes. I already described two different ones. One that was very solid, one that was very translucent. You have some that are wearing hats. You have some that have different glowing eyes. You have others that are just like a wisp of a shadow. You have crawlers. You have the hooded figure. You have all these different types. And so people want to know, okay, what are they? Yeah, some are honestly human spirits that aren't fully manifesting as an apparition. Some of them are interdimensional beings. Some of them are extraterrestrials. Some of them are light beings where you're not seeing the actual light because it's just beyond what our human eyes can perceive, and we're just kind of seeing the core of the thing. There are a lot of different explanations here as to what they are, but what it all does come down to is the way that our eyes are perceiving that light, because we only see into a very narrow band of the entire spectrum. So this is the way that we're perceiving whatever it is, whatever this being happens to be. That's the way that the light is basically reflecting back into our eyes and how we are perceiving this particular being. So I have a documentary called the Shadow Dimension out there. It's on Tubi TV and Roku channel, some other streaming platforms right now. And one of the people I interviewed for that, the psychic explorer Mark Anthony, had a really great quote in there where he says that we are basically, what we're seeing are these different species of entities that are using the same energetic modality to come into our world. And that's how we perceive them, is via some form of a shadow.
Wow, man. Wow. Bobo wants to know, are you aware of Jerry Marzinski?
Can't say that I am.
I can't say that I am
Who is
either.
Jerry
Bobo.
Marzinski?
Yeah, who is that? Now, I got two follow-up questions. One, I'll just get to the first one. You mentioned Massachusetts before, that you were living in Massachusetts. What part?
Westfield. So just
okay.
Out of Springfield. Yep.
Okay, yeah, I'm in New Hampshire right now. I lived in Gloucester for a few years.
Oh, all right.
And
Nice.
Gloucester was where I had my most frightening shadow person experience.
Okay.
Oh my Lord. It's very similar to how you were describing how it came down to you and everything.
Mhm.
This one, it was like the eyes and the mouth. It was darker than dark. I could kind of see sort of wispiness around the edges, but it came down from the foot of the bed, got closer to me, came down right in front of my face. It's probably around like 5 in the morning or so, close to.
Okay.
And the mouth got huge
Oh,
and
wow.
just let out a scream, but it was an inaudible scream. I could feel it though, like the vibration of like a subwoofer.
Hmm.
And I could feel that kind of vibration. I'm just sitting there like I get paralyzed completely, couldn't do anything other than just like think. And all I'm thinking is, please just go away. Please leave me alone.
Yeah.
Please leave me alone. And then eventually, after it was done screaming like that for 6 or 7 seconds, it just kind of poofed and went away. And I haven't had anything as crazy as that since. But that was absolutely the most frightening shadow person experience I ever had.
Yeah, something like that is definitely very frightening, and people report different things like that. The hovering over the top, even you can even go back to like ancient Sumer and find accounts of entities like that hovering over people, and so yeah, it's related to what we call the old hag. Um,
Yeah. Yes.
yeah,
Yep.
and that's it comes again in different forms and shapes and sizes, but a lot of times it has that the features of the old woman, very decrepit, or like a ghoul type of a creature. And one of the more fascinating accounts, and I included in my book A Walk in the Shadows, guy there in this happened to him in Rhode Island, so kind of there's something about New England.
Oh,
um
yes, there
it
is.
is a very old part of the country, but where he had woken up, and basically it was all shadowy in form, but he could tell it was the old woman, and it was sitting on his chest. He did not have the sleep paralysis, and he was actually able to physically take her and throw her off of him, and they both, I guess, rolled onto the floor together, and poof, she disappeared.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Wow. Bobo says he's a former prison psychotherapist who talks about the prevalence of shadow people and that the voices schizophrenics hear are real. He has a lot of videos on here. I'll have to look him up.
Yeah, and that's when we start getting to schizophrenia. I mean, that's something that it's tough, because people who are completely sane do hear voices. There's really schizophrenia too. So that becomes really difficult in this research, is trying to determine, okay, what is real and what is not. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my other follow up question was, you had mentioned you were in the Air Force.
Yeah.
Now, this doesn't have anything to do with shadow people, although maybe it does. But did you see anything that you can say that was quite confusing or mysterious or unexplained
Yeah,
during your
we
time?
we had shadow encounters at the Alaska Command Building at Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska, and I was on the show Mission Unexplained, and they featured this story, and I was a bit upset about the way that they featured it, because they made it like I was in this dark room by myself and I was the only one seeing this thing and all that, and they had a conversation with my supervisor that they saved for like the end. It was like, no, this happened like right front. So so let me tell the story. So yeah, I was 1992, 1995. I was stationed at Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska. The first year that I was there, I was waiting for my security clearance to come in. So I was working in the Squadron Networking Center. Security clearance came in, and I went over to the Alaska Command Building to basically work in their secure communications facility in the basement of that building. And so when when I was first there, people were spooked throughout the offices there. So there's no windows or anything. There was the base comm center that was off to the side. I was part of Worldwide Military Command Control Systems, and we had our server racks and everything in what we called the rack room. We shared a little bit of space with the comm center, and then there was the office area. We usually saw these shadows moving in and about the office. We all saw them. At least the majority of people did. I mean, some people just may not have talked about it, but we could be like walking, down the row of cubicles, and also, a shadow would, walk by you, turn your butt. You see that? Yeah, I saw that. Okay. Or you'd be, sitting there at your desk and you'd see something walk by. What the heck? So when I was first assigned there, the first week or two that I was there, my supervisor wasn't there. I can't remember if he was on leave or if he had a temporary duty somewhere or whatever. So I'd been working there for a couple of weeks. I'd already seen a little bit of it. And so he finally comes back. We're sitting there in his office and we're just chatting, getting to know each other. And all of a sudden I see a shadow walk by the door, and I looked out the door and noticed it. And he noticed that I noticed it. And all he said was, "Yeah, sometimes that happens here." And then went right back into the conversation that we were having. It was like, okay. So yeah, this happened the entire time that I was there. And the prevailing story that I got from some of the other personnel that were working there was that, according to legend, the building that we were in had originally been built and was once a hospital. And where we were at there in the basement had been the morgue, and then our rack room was where they had kept the coolers. And sometimes we'd see like a shadow dart through there or into there was a little small room way in the back. I never saw the lights on in that room, but it held some old printers and stuff. Every once in a while you see a shadow dart into there. So that was the prevailing story. And I held on to that story ever since. Well, I'd been on the television show, The Alaska Triangle, and I'm writing the book, Alaska's Mysterious Triangle. And I want to include this story in the book. So I want to get all my facts straight about the building and everything. So I started doing research on the Alaska Command building and discovered that it was never a hospital at all, that it was built exactly what it was being used for, which was command. So that got my head scratching, like, okay, the whole idea of, these are the souls or spirits of people who had, passed away down there made sense. But now it was like, okay, what could this be? And so the one theory that I've come up with it is, we're relating it to the power and energy of the Alaska Triangle. So could it possibly been that the activity of the triangle, the way that it kind of generates these different electromagnetic fields and all this interesting activity, could it have possibly been creating a bit of a rift in time, that we were actually seeing time slips here, that we were experiencing personnel from the past, personnel from the future? We may have even been experiencing ourselves at other points in time, and it's coming off as a bit of a shadow.
That sounds plausible. That sounds like it makes sense, considering that you discovered it wasn't a hospital.
Yeah.
I wonder how that happened. Was that just kind of like a game of telephone that, someone said something and then everyone was like, yeah, I guess so. It makes sense.
Probably. Yeah. I don't know where the story of the hospital originated from. I think it was a combination of people getting creeped out by the shadows that were down there and trying to figure out some sort of plausible explanation for what was going on here. And if you look at the building, it's like, yeah, I could imagine that may have once been, like a small hospital way back in the day in the 1950s or whatever. I could see that, but it wasn't.
Wow. Yeah, because that is a common story, seeing shadow people in old hospitals, abandoned hospitals, even current up and running hospitals.
Oh yeah. You get all kinds of fascinating paranormal stories out of hospitals, and it's energy that's there. Sometimes. Well, and you have a lot of different stories. So I mentioned light beams before, where you're at a hospital and you have somebody there that's passing away. You hear stories of people see angelic light beings there by the bed of somebody who's about to pass, but they also sometimes see shadow beings standing there near the bed of somebody who's about to pass. So they kind of equate this to, oh, that person's going to the good place and that person's going to the bad place, that sort of thing. It's like, it's not that cut and dry. That shadow that's standing there by the bed, it could still very well be a light beam, but again, our eyes only see into a very narrow band of the spectrum, so the light that's emanating could just be beyond what our eyes can actually perceive, and we're just kind of seeing the center of it. You kind of think of an example that I use for this, and please don't do this at home. We'll throw that disclaimer out here. Stare at a light bulb long enough, and at some point you will no longer see the light. You just see the silhouette of the bulb. That's kind of the idea. Don't do that, but that's the way it works.
Yeah, I forget what the name of it is, of when, you stare at a light for long enough and then you kind of look away, you close your eyes, whatever it may be, and you see the impression, the negative impression. Because you could do the same thing too when you look at an inverted image and you stare at it long enough, and then you close your eyes, you see the proper image. Yeah, colored in your mind's eye, or your eyes, whatever it may be. Is there any credence to this? I always thought about, can shadow people be maybe exerting some kind of almost like a gravitational force that's bending the light? Could there be anything to that?
So, I mean, with shadow people, you're basically talking, the occlusion of light. It's blocking out the light. So, yeah, to a degree.
Almost like a weird black hole effect. I mean,
it depends. This kind of comes down to, again, the type of shadow that we're talking about. Because you have ones that come off and maybe a little bit shimmery in nature. What the heck is that? And sometimes people call it like the shimmer man sort of thing. So it really kind of comes down to, okay, is it occluding the light? Is it bending the light? Are we just seeing something out of another dimension that we just really can't even explain what in the world it's really doing? And then the time slip ones, I mean, that's a whole other thing there too. So, and I liken that to, so yeah, a great example here. A story that was related to me a few years ago on a different podcast that I was on. And so this young gentleman, when he was a kid, he had walked into the kitchen one day and saw this tall, dark, hooded figure standing by the kitchen table. Scaring him to death, boom, he booked out of there. And it became the hooded shadow person story of the household for years. Well, grows up, he's a little older, he's a young man now, and he's in the kitchen one day making himself a sandwich at the kitchen table. He's wearing a hoodie. And all of a sudden he sees walking through the kitchen doorway this short shadow person that stops and then boom, runs right out. And he's like, oh my God, it was me the whole time. That was myself when I was a little kid, seeing myself now, but he was wearing the hoodie. So then the question becomes, okay, time slip there, two different moments in time interacting with each other, but why did it come off as a shadow and not fully formed, not seeing himself like that? So here's what I liken it to in this particular situation, in any case, is that people who are old enough remember the old radios. We still have dials that we turn like in our cars, and they kind of click through the stations now. But back in the day, you had that band that you had to like finely tune. And if you got right on the perfectly on the station, then it would come in very nice. But if you're a little bit before, a little bit after, it would come in staticky. And so that's what I liken this to, is that he was tuning into himself, his own energy at that other point in time, but he wasn't able to fully do it. He was a little bit before, a little bit after on that frequency, because everything comes down to frequency, resonance, energy, vibration. So he didn't quite have the perfect frequency there. And so it came off as a shadow rather than fully formed.
So I guess this kind of can segue right into the stack time theory that you have, because that's what this sounds like. This sounds like you're talking about all of time is occurring at the same time.
Yeah.
And depending upon how you tune into it or what your frequency is, you can actually access some or maybe all of a clearer image of it.
Right, you can. All time exists. I guess I should back up here a little bit. So time time doesn't really exist. It's a human concept that we've developed to describe our reality and keep track of things. Humans generally like to do things in an orderly fashion.
I tried using that when I was late for class all the time. It didn't work.
And that's the thing. It's like we use time to keep track of the seasons, when to plant the crops, when to show up to whether class or work or whatever at the right moments, so our teachers or supervisors don't get upset with us. So it helps us to manage our lives. But it doesn't really exist. I mean, that works for here. It's not going to work the same in some other solar system somewhere. They're even trying to come up with time zones on the moon, which it's in a tidal lock around the planet. How in the world does that work? That was a little beyond me. But what we call time is really the fourth dimension. That is where our consciousness resides. It's really our consciousness in the fourth dimension. And that makes us as human beings fascinating, because our fourth dimensional consciousness is inside our third dimensional body. So we are actually multi-dimensional beings ourselves. And we have access to all of those dimensions that are below us: third, second, first. And there's a controversial zero dimension, which is just a point. So you have point, line, a plane, which is a flat surface, and 3D objects. And we have all access to all that from the fourth dimension that we call time. Well, physics shows us that there's up to 11 hyperspatial dimensions. So from fifth, sixth, seventh, and onward, they would all view time like we view a three-dimensional object. It's all there. It's all concurrent. They see it as whole. So that means everything completely exists all time. So past, present, and future. So take where you're sitting right now. This is where stacked time comes into play. Take where you're sitting right now. Every moment that has happened, is happening, and will happen are all there right now. Every moment, this is what I liken it to. Every moment like a photograph in a giant stack of photographs. And where we get these things like time slips is when two moments in that stack of photos, two of those photos, resonate at the same frequency for a moment and kind of bleed into each other. And we get a glimpse of one, and they get a glimpse of us. And there's even interaction that happens between the two. And that's the time slip, and that's what stacked time theory is.
So what you're kind of explaining too is what a lot of people would even refer to as like the Mandela effect and things like that.
Well, the Mandela effect is a result of moments in time interacting with each other. And I believe that some people can travel in time. It's more with to me, true time travel has more to do with meditation and the consciousness, rather than jumping into a DeLorean with a flux capacitor and zooming off. It'd be a lot of fun, but yeah, when you have that interaction between moments in time, and it could even be like, let's say you had somebody who mastered time travel, went back in time, and they're just observing, just watching. They are still having an effect on the environment, and they could just be nonchalantly walking across the street in this other moment in time, and there's a car that is that's coming, and they have to stop. They have to brake for them to cross that street. Well, in the original moment, the car just went right on through, but now they had to stop and slow down. So that changes the trajectory that they were on. Maybe further down the road, they were supposed to get into an accident and don't, or maybe they do get in an accident where they weren't supposed to. So it kind of drastically changes that person's life, even though the observer was like, oh, I'm just kind of going about my business here. So that has a ripple effect through time. And it might not even be like that drastic. It could just be like little things, like the Mandela effect. A lot of times, this comes up when we look at branding. And I'm going to tell you, there aren't time travelers going back in time to change the spelling of Fruit Loops or Oscar Mayer. That's just too trivial. But let's say, using that same car example, that the trajectory of their morning commute changed, and maybe because of that they ended up getting stuck in traffic, or they had to take a different route or something like that. And maybe the first time around they had driven by some sort of fruit stand that had this like really nice cornucopia that was set up with the fruit and everything. Oh yeah, that's pretty nice, and took that back with them to the office. And as being a marketing executive, or maybe the illustrator, came up with this idea for Fruit of the Loom to have a cornucopia with fruit. Well, but then this other thing happened here, where now instead of just kind of driving through that intersection, now they had to stop for this guy crossing the road and changed their whole morning, and maybe they took a different route and didn't pass by that fruit stand and got to the office to make the decision or make the illustration or whatever. And no cornucopia now. And maybe that's why people are remembering the cornucopia when it's not actually on the branding. It's possible ideas and ripple effects and things like that.
Yeah, it's weird because I could have sworn like Berenstein Bears was with the E, not the A. And I could have sworn about the cornucopia thing. But then other things like the way Oscar Mayer spelled and stuff like that, I'd never...
Well, I mean, we even had a jingle spelling it out. So,
Yeah.
So it's really bizarre.
And human memory is weird, too. So that's another thing that you get thrown into it where, you can have misrememberings all over the place.
Yeah, and I'm not ruling that out either. Some of it could very well be misremembering. But on the scale that we're talking about millions of people.
Yeah, mass misremembering.
Are remembering things differently. And some of these things that pop up, I mean, those are kind of the popular ones, the branding and all that. But some of these things that pop up that people remember differently are really, really obscure. And there's people from all over the world that are remembering it this different way. So how does something like that happen? And so I think I think it's these moments in time, whether it happens via a time slip or actual intentional time travel. Again, I don't think they're intentionally going back to change branding and stuff like that, but they might be there for some other purpose, and just the ripple effect of their presence being there changes some things.
The craziest one that freaks me out about a Mandela effect was one time, and it happened to me, and it drove me nuts for an entire weekend because I kept scouring the internet to find this image. Do you follow hockey at all?
Oh, not much, no.
If I say Mario Lemieux, do you know who that is?
I know Mario Lemieux, yeah.
Okay, Mario Lemieux.
So
all right.
If I follow hockey at all, I will root for the Bruins when they're in it.
Oh, well, hey, you're a man after my own heart. All right. Yeah. So when I was a kid, I thought this goal that Lemieux did was so cool. I tried to keep on repeating it when I was playing. Mm-hmm. And I go to tell my wife about it because she was getting into hockey past the point of when Mario Lemieux was in the game, and I was telling him how good he was. And I'm trying to find this goal on YouTube, thinking it would be so easy to find. I'll just find it. It's up there. It was during the Stanley Cup Finals. He's against the North Stars. I could find this goal, and I could swear the goal was that he had two defensemen on him. He takes the stick, he puts it behind his back, he gets the other the right hand, because he's a right hand shot, mm-hmm. and he gets the stick and he puts the puck up to the right corner of the net. And the footage would show that it's from behind the net, so the puck goes to the top left on the screen. So I'm thinking it was easy to show her about how cool this goal was.
Yeah.
Every single clip I find of this goal that I could have swore up and down, and I even practiced it as a kid, it was not that goal. It was not that goal at all. Nothing even close to it. And it was the same game. It was a North Stars Stanley Cup final game, but that's not how the goal went in any way, shape, or form.
Like not even close.
Not even close.
Wow.
And I could have sworn on everything in my life that was the goal, that's the thing, because I practiced it as a kid, and that wasn't the goal. It freaked me the hell out.
Yeah, that is absolutely bizarre, especially since you're saying that you practice it again and again and again as a kid. Why would you if you hadn't seen it like that?
Yeah, so weird. Now, the one thing about the stack time theory, I can get behind maybe accessing the past, maybe even the present, because the present is kind of always constantly occurring, and that's all we're really consciously aware of. But when it comes to the future, that's the thing I have a tough time wrapping my head around, is the ability to kind of either glean or access parts of the future, because I always view the future as constantly changing, and that you can take all those different twists and turns, some of that you mentioned, sure, and alter and change the future. How can that be that we can access all of it in its entirety, the future included?
Right. Well, again, because it's all here as a whole. So always in motion is the future, right? From Yoda says. Yeah,
Yoda.
But
I'm not going to base everything on what Yoda says, but
right. Well, but given what we were just talking about, always in motion is the past too. So it all changes. This is why we have these weird memories and stuff. So the future is already there. It's already played out, that doesn't mean we don't have any influence over it. I don't believe so much in predestination. It's because we have free will, right? So we are able to change and do different things. And so, yeah, what we're doing now can have an effect on the future, can have an effect on the past. And I think that's what really people get hung up on, is like, well, if I make all these, different decisions, then I should be able to have an effect on my future. And yeah, you do. But in one sense, it has already been written. It's already been done. But as we do change things, it'll change what happens in that future. So,
so you're talking about using the presence as a reference point, then? That's what you're talking about.
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah.
And
we see
in this moment you can access, because you would say that, okay, according to this moment in time, this is the past, this is the future. But as you keep continually moving throughout your course, everything does basically change, but depending on how you reference that specific snapshot in time, whether it's the past, present, future, that's what you're going to see.
Right, exactly. Yeah, depending on
it's not that it's frozen,
almost like a choose your own adventure. It's gonna change.
Okay.
It's gonna change it along the way like that.
I could understand that a bit more then.
Yeah. And so, people have premonitions. People do get a glimpse into the future, and it is like a type of time travel. It'll happen a lot of times when we sleep. Our brain enters into different wave states, and there are certain states that we can get into where basically our consciousness becomes free floating, and we go to those different moments in time and we see different things play out, and we bring it back with us, like, wow, that was a pretty interesting dream. And then, like, later that day or the next week or a month later or whatever, all of a sudden the whole scene plays out, and it's like, wow, I had a dream about that whole thing just like that. Well, yeah, your consciousness went into the future and actually observed it and watched it happen. So yeah, it's all there for us to be able to access.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so an example that I like to use. So yeah, there's the dreams, premonitions, but there's also like what Carl Jung described as the collective unconscious. Some people call it the Akashic records. I call it eternal knowledge, because if the entire universe is there, then all the knowledge for all time is accessible to us. And Jung kind of likened it to, well, our consciousness is basically able to tap into different things and bring it down, because it's all there, kind of free floating information. So I look at a guy like Nikola Tesla, and some of the things and ideas that he proposed, things that he developed, were so far in advance. I mean, he got laughed out of the room, and we're using the technology now. When he talked about, everybody's going to walk around one day with a device in their pocket that'll hold the knowledge of the world. Well, it doesn't hold it all on it, but I can access it through my phone. This guy developed the first drone back in the 1890s, and his idea was like a little submarine. It was like a little boat, controlled by radio waves, and the whole idea was this was during the Spanish-American War. The whole idea was he wanted to eliminate humans from wars and just have the machines battle it out. So this little boat would actually, on command, go out there and launch his torpedoes at whatever the target was. But he also included in here the idea that it would be able to figure out on its own where to go, what to target, and when to shoot the torpedoes. So basically, he's talking artificial intelligence. And he took it a step further, as everybody's like scratching their head. And he's just showing, he's got the little boat and he's demonstrating it and everything. And they're all kind of scratching their heads. What a machine is going to make decisions to do that? And he's like, look. And he called it a teletomaton. He said, look, I can build a teletomaton of myself that would look like me, act like me, and make decisions just like me. And of course, they're laughing him out of the room. And this is basically, he's talking robotics and artificial intelligence in the 1890s. The guy was way ahead of his time. And so, he would, like Einstein had his thought experiments. Tesla was doing the same thing. He had his own thought experiments too. And basically, it was a type of meditative state where they'd go into these meditations and they'd think about different ideas and stuff would come to them. And basically, what they were doing was they were tapping into that eternal knowledge and essentially downloading the information. And because Tesla's mind was so open to all of these different ideas and concepts, he was able to basically grab ideas that were way ahead of his time that were embedded into our time frame now.
It's interesting because it almost sounds like in some way it's kind of like remote viewing.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. Remote viewing is a little bit different. I mean, it's kind of where you're sending your consciousness to,
or at least the same principle that would bring about remote viewing.
Yeah, yeah. Remote viewing is just kind of keeping it here rather than going out there and grabbing knowledge, where you're able to, basically send your consciousness and tune into another place on Earth and get a glimpse of it. Yeah.
Wow, man. So we have about 10 or so minutes left. I do want to touch upon the Alaska Triangle a bit more.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You mentioned it a little bit, but what, for those that don't know, what is the Alaska Triangle?
So I'm pretty sure everybody knows the Bermuda Triangle. So it's like that, but there in Alaska. And there are a lot of these, what we call triangle areas around the world. I mean, they've always been there. We just started calling the Bermuda Triangle in 1950s because a number of the writers and scribes at the time noticed that as they were writing about the different phenomena that had occurred in the area over throughout history, they noticed, well, it's kind of generally in this triangular shape, and they just picked 3 significant points: Bermuda, Miami, and San Juan, Puerto Rico, and they called it the Bermuda Triangle. So as other areas around the world were like, hey, we've got all this stuff happening over here too, we'll call ourselves a triangle. So yeah, Alaska had a lot of that same sort of phenomena going on. Missing people, missing airplanes, all kinds of stuff going on with ships. You got paranormal activity, cryptid sightings, all this UFO sightings, all this bizarre stuff happening up there. So for a while, they actually called it Alaska's Bermuda Triangle, and they just shortened it up here, maybe over the last
Alaska's
30 years
Bermuda
or so.
Triangle.
Yeah. Yeah, bizarre, right? So yeah, over the last 20 or 30 years, they kind of cleaned that up and just call it the Alaska Triangle now. But
yeah,
basically extends, and it's huge. So from Juneau in the south, Anchorage in the middle, and Yukiavik at the top, formerly known as Barrow, and it's like 180,000 square miles. It's like a little bit bigger than the state of California that this area is. But yeah, you have some of the most bizarre missing plane episodes up there. Twice. So in the 1950s, there was a Douglas Skymaster airplane that went missing out at Elmendorf Air Force Base. Nobody knows what happened to it, even to this day, completely gone. And it was the biggest search and rescue mission at that time that was sent out to try to find this thing. And there was even another smaller plane that went down like a couple weeks later around the same location that the Douglas Skymaster had last checked in. And they found that like boom, right away. But this huge plane, no, can't find it.
That wasn't the one that involved politicians, was it?
No, that was 22 years later. That was
Okay.
Hale Boggs, Nick Begich.
That's right.
Yeah, so that one went missing in 1972, and then that became the biggest search and rescue mission in U.S. history. So it's like, yeah, Alaska's like go big or go home. we're gonna have the biggest search and rescue missions, and yeah, that was bizarre because they had spy planes and all kinds of stuff out there looking for it, and again. Nothing has ever been found with that.
Wow. Now there's a lot of military bases over there,
Yeah.
and there's some strange activity with mountains in the region, and some even report sightings of like UFO bases, for lack of a better term, UFOs or UAPs going into the mountains.
Yeah, you get a lot of that there. Yeah, a lot of UFO sightings. Even with that Douglas Skymaster, just before and just after it went missing, there were UFOs seen there around Alaska. We were talking about remote viewing earlier. The famous remote viewer Pat Price had viewed a alien base, actually joint alien and military inside Mount Hayes there, which people have seen UFOs around Mount Hayes for decades. So it kind of makes sense. There's no real, there's no road that goes up there. The closest thing is Fort Greely, which is to the east, some significant miles away. But people have seen UFOs around Fort Greely too. So that whole area is just like teeming with UFO activity. And then there's the idea of the Black Pyramid under Mount Denali. And I mean, that came off of a seismograph, 93. Basically, China detonated, they were doing some nuclear testing. They detonated a nuclear device, and the scientists are, they know what's going to happen. So they're going to set up the seismographs and all that, and watch the waves. And as it passed through, the seismic shock passed through the Earth's crust and hit Alaska, they noticed under Mount Denali a pyramidal shape that was under there. So that started getting people's attention. There's a bit of a conspiracy and cover up with that. There's a story of Doug Munchler, who was actually stationed there in Alaska the same time that I was. He was on Fort Richardson. He was in the Army, and he had seen the news air on one of the local stations, and figured, well, it's going to air again, or maybe one of the other stations, or there'll be some follow-up. So he's telling everybody about it. Hey, keep watching the news and watch the follow-up. There was no follow-up that ever aired. No other station ever aired it either. So he's like, what the heck happened here? So he's really curious about it. So he went down to the station and asked them, hey, you have the footage, the clip, whatever, of the story that you're in. And they said, we didn't run a story like that at all. It's like, what the heck, what gives? And so they wouldn't cough it up or anything. So he's walking out kind of dejected, and there was a junior staffer that kind of pulled him aside just as he was walking out the building. He said, actually, we did run that story. There were a couple of guys in suits that came by a little while before you showed up and confiscated the tapes.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Men in Black type stuff?
Men in Black type of stuff, yeah.
Wow. Man. Comics for Life has a question. It says, are you aware of other creators who existed at the same time as Tesla but are ignored?
I mean, you had a lot of interesting inventors at the time. There's a great book. It's called Wizard. I forget the author's name. And as you're reading through who Tesla worked with, there's a bunch of names in there. And I'm not, the names are going to escape me now. A bunch of names of different guys that he worked with, that, guys that got lost to time, but people that he collaborated with and was working with, and did some wonderful work together. So yeah, there are certainly others that have been lost to time. The thing that Edison had, I mean, Edison did invent some great things, but he was also great at marketing. And Tesla, unfortunately, was not a very good businessman. So like the whole Wardenclyffe Tower and all of that, JP Morgan was going to split 50-50 with him. And Tesla said, well, you're financially backing me, you're trusting me, you should have 51%. And so that destroyed him because of that extra 1%. If he'd have gone 50-50, he would have had, when he went to court over everything getting shut down at Wardenclyffe and all that, he would have had a legitimate beef in court, and he would have won his cases, essentially. But because he coughed up that other 1%, and it was his idea to cough up the other 1%, he had no leverage whatsoever.
Man. Comics for Life says, do you believe in Admiral Byrd's findings? I'm guessing in reference to Antarctica?
Antarctica, yeah.
That is a very interesting...
That's kind of interesting, because that's some research I've had to do here lately. It's interesting because they come out of his journals. The whole idea of near the South Pole there, this basically a tunnel that he flies into that goes into the earth, and all of a sudden it kind of the tunnel starts getting like there's lush and green and opens up into like this crystal city, and the beings that were talking to him there, and they're all upset about the nuclear bombs and everything on the surface. Here's what's interesting about that is, people kind of immediately scoff at the idea of, how could it be, where's the lush and green going to come from? How's it going to be warm there? And then it also kind of turned into this big whole huge hollow earth thing. It's like, well, I think there are hollowed out areas of the earth. The earth itself is not hollow, but there are some very, very big cavernous areas, old magma chambers, old magma tubes, things like this that are under the earth that certainly civilizations and other beings and other life forms can make a home out of. What's interesting about the lush green aspect of it all, for one, Antarctica, we do know, science has shown this through ice core samples, that there's an ancient jungle under the ice there. So it was in a warm climate at some point. But also with like the Vostok Lake, this is almost 2.5 miles under the ice, and it's a liquid lake, which means underneath there's some geothermal heat that is rising out there to melt the ice to be able to create this lake under there of liquid water. So that kind of tells you right there that, well, there are, some potentially warm areas deep underground there in Antarctica. So it does stand to reason that if he got deep enough near some of these other warm geothermal areas, maybe there are areas there under Antarctica that could open up to, lush vegetation and things like this.
It kind of reminds me of like the cavern expeditions that Neil Armstrong was involved in. Mm-hmm. And then even that huge cavern system in Vietnam.
Yeah. Oh, that's so beautiful too. Yeah.
Like, holy smokes, it's like a whole other planet. The one that they claim to see like reptilian beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, it's all possible. For the skeptics are like, well, show me that it is. Fine, show me that it isn't.
You go back and forth all day.
You could, yeah.
And this is a good question to close things out. Comics for Life. This was going to be one of mine too. What's your take on aliens and the UFO phenomenon? I know that's a rather broad question. Mine in specificity was going to be what we're seeing currently with David Grush and a bunch of other things that are being talked about, little efforts of disclosure. What's your take specifically on how all of that is going down and what maybe the future holds for that?
Well, so the government had to do something. They had to say something, because there's too many people walking around these days with a HD or better camera in their pocket. So people are, back in the day, it was blurry photos, or, if it's a nighttime sky, here's a couple dots. These are the lights that I saw. Okay, it's, the government could just say, oh, it was anything, right? So they could, just pawn it off on all kinds of different excuses. But now we have technology where anybody can take these magnificent photos and videos, and so a lot of this stuff has been, coming to light. They can no longer deny it, is the thing. So if they can no longer deny it, okay, fine, we'll give the public a little bit of something. We'll admit something's going on, but we are going to control the narrative. And that's what all the hearings and different things are right now, is they're giving us some, a couple little crumbs, and they're going to, doing what they can to try to control the narrative. So what exactly are the UFOs? Again, it kind of comes down to almost like we were talking with the shadow people. Okay, what exactly are, we talking about? What's the specific incident? Because I do believe that, yes, we do have physical crashed material. I do believe that, yes, extraterrestrials from other planets have visited here. How they traveled here, I don't believe it was through our Newtonian physics that we're using now to basically strap a bomb to ourselves to get ourselves off the planet. I think they've probably figured out something a little more sophisticated, just all practicality. Our type of technology, you look at the Voyager satellites right now, I mean, they just, what, a decade ago got to the edge of the solar system or venturing outside of it now. Well, those have been out there for 50 years. That's a lifetime. So just to be able to sustain your life long enough to be able to travel those distances, you need some other form of travel. So, have they figured out, wormholes or stargates or something to be able to traverse, the cosmos like that? It makes sense that they figure something like that out to be able to get here physically. Some, I believe, are, interdimensional beings that, maybe they are, it could be multi-layered. They could be ETs from another dimension that have come here. So from another planet, but also in another dimension somewhere to come here. Some, I believe, are living right alongside of us. So what we'd call like an ultra-terrestrial. Again, it could be something from another dimension. And then you have some of these that are, they could be time slips, like we were talking about earlier. Might not just be a person or something that we see come into existence. It could be a flying craft from another point in Earth's history. Some people have tried to say, well, they're not extraterrestrials. They're us from the future. And they've like kind of said that's all UFO activity. All those UFOs are just us from the future.
I love when they just know.
Yeah, they just know, and it's a blank statement. This is the answer. Yeah. And it's like, well, that might be an answer for some. It's not going to be an answer for all. And even the idea of, so yeah, some of them could be us from the future, but they don't have to be. They could be from the future. They don't have to be us from the future, because we are the planet's 4.5 billion years old. Humans have been around for a very, very small piece of that. Anatomically erect humans have been around 315,000 years. It's not very long at all. And you think about, okay, the dinosaurs went extinct 64 million years ago. That's just over 1% of the entire lifespan of the Earth ago. It's mind-boggling, the numbers. And the Earth is supposed to be around for about another 5 billion years until the sun becomes a red giant and destroys the planet. So that's a lot of years for humanity to kind of stick around. So stands to reason, for a variety of different reasons, that we're not going to be here. We'll use 64 million. If 64 million years from now, are humans still going to be here? Probably not. We might destroy ourselves. Conditions might become such a way on the planet that we do have to go somewhere else. We need to colonize somewhere else or find another planet to live on or something. So over that time, as the Earth keeps going, another life form could evolve here on the planet, could become intelligent, develop civilization, develop technology, time travel technology. So it could be another life form indigenous to Earth that is traveling back in time, but not human. It could even be still extraterrestrials. Millions of years from now, come across Earth, humanity's gone. Come across Earth, but we can inhabit that. We can make a colony there, and they settle, build their civilization, develop their technology, and again develop time travel technology. So it still could be extraterrestrials from the future, but are living on Earth in the future. So you have all kinds of different possibilities, is what I'm saying.
That's not a clear-cut, easy black and white answer.
No. No, and that's the thing, is that you have to. There aren't any clear black and white answers to this, because there's so many different possibilities of what we're talking about here. So you have to be really open-minded in this field.
Now, because you brought it up, this is a thought that I've had before too. There's so many red giants that are out there in existence in the cosmos. What if even just a small fraction of those contained very, very advanced life? Like, I'm talking 1 million or so years more advanced than us. Mm-hmm. What if they left those areas? Their little Goldilocks zone is all that is swallowed up. So we don't know of their planetary existence. But these things had left, seeking out other areas within the cosmos to settle, to survive.
Yeah, that happens. I absolutely believe. I mean,
Because that's what all I'm thinking is like
I
just
think
basically what we would even try to do
it is exactly
at
what we
that
would try
point
to
in
do.
time. We would,
Yeah, there's a lot of people that are, get upset at the money that we spend um, in exploring space and putting ourselves up into space. And, they say, well, we need to take care of our planet. And yes, I agree. We need to take care of our planet, but we also need to explore space as well. And we need to find some happy medium between the two costs, because at some point, you know, we could do amazing things to keep our life sustainable on this planet, but there is absolutely nothing we can do about that sun becoming a red giant and destroying us. At some point, we need to get off of this planet, or we absolutely will not exist anymore. So we do need to keep, funding that so we can evolve and expand and go somewhere for when that day arrives. So yeah, it's exactly what we would do. We would find another place to live, and it might have to piecemeal it. We might have to find, as that expands,
because other
it might
planets
heat
then
up other.
become in the Goldilocks zone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mars will heat up, so it'll make, Mars more hospitable, or even like some of these moons around the gas giants and things like that. So we might have to just kind of hop, skip, and jump around the solar system for a while before we can get outside of it. But yeah, that's absolutely what we would do.
Yeah. All right. Well, at least my little weird idea that I had a couple months ago wasn't too crazy.
Not crazy at all. So, and we may
I can't
already,
prove it, but it's not a crazy
already
idea.
be here from
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a conversation for a whole other show. But Mike, thank you so much for being on here tonight. This was great.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you being on here. Hopefully I can have you back on. I want to try to get a bunch of people like yourself back on again for the fall, sometime in October. So I'll be in touch. Hopefully that's a good time. If not, we'll connect hopefully down the line again, because I do want to have a conversation about a couple more things. Cause
Sure, absolutely.
you're right in my wheelhouse of interests in these topics. So it's been a pleasure talking to you. Before you go, anything you want to plug, anything you want to mention?
Yeah, well, I mean, you see it on the screen right there, MikeRickSecker.com. That's my main website. You can find all my books out there. I do want to throw out there that we'll have my online learning site, Connect Universe Portal, which is it's a community of like-minded people coming together. We talk about a lot of these topics and all that. And I actually have a Connecting the Universe exclusive masterclass coming up here November 9th. It's in Rahway, New Jersey. You can find the information for that on my website as well. But that's like 4 major presentations all in one day. We're making like a whole day out of it. It's going to be fantastic. So join us for that.
Very nice. All right, man. Thank you so much again, everybody in the chat. Thank you guys too. All the best to you. Thank you guys for watching tonight. Some of your questions were really great too in the chat. Appreciate it. And Mike, once again, thank you for your time. And I hope we could do this again in the future. This was great.
Yep. Sounds like a plan.
All right, man. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful night and an even better tomorrow. I will see you guys on Tuesday. I'll be on here with Rob Geronimo. It'll be a fun show. Until then, see you guys. All the best to you. Take it easy.